Talking of dramas that focus on sort of different groups of people, we've got the third episode of Kiri.
Yeah.
Now, Kiri has been an interesting way that Jack Thorne's told his story. As we talked about a little bit last week, the first episode focused solely on Sarah Lancashire to the extent you went, oh, this is going to be a Sarah Lancashire vehicle. And then the second episode was all about Kiri's relationship with her birth family and her grandfather Toby trying to track down the son Nathaniel, who was the prime suspect for her murder, and all that entailed, and their sort of history and things like that. And now this third episode again shifts the focus to the adoptive or the would-be adoptive family, the foster family, Jim and Alice, played by Stephen McIntosh and Leah Williams, and their son Simon, and sort of peers behind the curtains there. We got hints about their marriage and the sort of the cracks in their marriage, and Simon sort of being a bit off. Reminds me almost a little bit of the character in Andrew in the Versace thing. He's got this sort of strange... Well, he's got this sort of strange way of like lurking, hasn't he, and just appearing and not being
kind
quite...
Of like, it's that real pushing of the boundary of what is inappropriate. Nothing he did was outrightly criminal, but it was that real kind of like uncomfortable.
Yes.
I think
so.
In fact, some of the scenes were downright uncomfortable in this series, in this episode.
So a bit more information we got here was that, especially about Alice, that she was a teacher at the school which Simon attends, and she left after slapping a student who was
sexually inappropriate, I think they said, or
said something inappropriately to her, and she was off work with stress. At the beginning, came back in to see like the headmistress and say, I think I'm ready to come back, and she basically saying, no, you're not. She's also having an affair that Simon knows about. We got some quite intense choice scenes with the lover just out of the swimming baths. I hope they had a shower first, or they'd be covered in chlorine. And also through flashbacks, we see that Alice was following Miriam. She dropped him off dropped Kiri off at Toby and Rochelle's house, and the police investigation goes on. They do a reenactment where they discover that Kiri actually was seen again and was seen on a bus, and she was coming back home. And now Jim suspects Simon of being the murderer. Simon, we learn, sort of knows his parents' marriage is falling apart, that they both had affairs, that they're staying together specifically for him, that Kiri was like, as they used the phrase, a new glue to sort of hold the marriage together, and now she's gone.
They haven't found a scrap of CCTV of Si. Not in any of the places he claimed to be that day. They haven't found a trace of him.
Doesn't mean he's lying.
Should we consider the possibility he's not telling the truth? Should we consider that? She came back to the house. They didn't see her leave. Meanwhile, no one can decide where he is. Shouldn't we consider the possibility that our son...
He loved her.
He loves you. I don't like the way he looks at you either sometimes. And it isn't just, if I'm honest, it isn't just because he didn't go to school. Because if this was just about happenstance, I'd be thinking you did it. Somewhere in there, you're scared of it too, of what he is or might be. You know how unhappy he is, how angry he gets, how insular.
Jim, this is our son.
I know.
What proof do you have?
I don't have anything! Only what I feel in there and in here! Please, don't turn your nose up at me. I'm trying to be truthful here. You think this is easy for me to say?
You shout like that, he'll hear you, and then this will be much worse.
Jim goes, I'm going to take the rap because I don't want Simon being arrested. And then Alice goes to the police and says she saw the car that belongs to Nathaniel, which she saw obviously hanging around outside Toby's house. She saw it hanging outside her house when she was writing the day that Kiri came back. And then the other sort of storylines of the characters that we've spent time with already, you've got Miriam, who It's sort of learning a bit. It's almost like learning about how other people perceive her. So she has this conversation with.
I know that really she was only in, I think, 2 or 3 scenes. The scene with her and her former colleague was very good.
The Cara Theobald character, where she was like, "Did I really say that?" It was all about how she didn't understand the impacts that her words had said. So she was almost sort of having a go at her for revealing to the press that she'd been drinking, and she said, well, I could have said all these other things about you. I could have said some of the things you've said. And she's, did I really say that? And then you've got this scene where Simon actually comes, he runs away and ends up at Miriam's house, and Alice has it out with Miriam, and Alice basically says, you know, if you didn't do it intentionally, you did basically insinuate that if we did this, Kiri, she would be our daughter if we let her spend time with her, and now you've said this to the press, and it really upset me. And it was almost like self-introspection for Miriam in this episode.
There was one little bit where she went, well, maybe I am, it never clouded my judgment, the drinking, or did it? There was almost that moment of, maybe I'm not quite the person I think I am. And I think this whole, and I think where we're going to end up with Miriam's story is much more a case of self-reflection. She firmly believed what she was doing was the right thing, and still does, really, doesn't she? When she's she does believe she hasn't done anything wrong.
I mean, I really like this still, and I think just the ensemble cast alone is brilliant. One thing I haven't praised, certainly in the podcast, I might have done it in my original article, is Jack Thorne has found a really good composer for this. The guy's name is Clark. He did the music on Relic as well, which I was one of the only things I liked about Relic. And it is very sort of jarring music. We had this in National Treasure as well. But it works in terms of the characters, and it enhances the scenes, and I really like the music. And as well, I mentioned him last week, Urs Lind's direction is brilliant. I think all the elements of this work, and it is almost like a labour of love in that everything comes together perfectly. Any thoughts, anything to add?
2 little things to add. One, I still feel like the press is a separate character. Again, they are like a pack of animals in this episode.
The way that the press are being done, again, he did say, I know I mentioned this at the screening, he said, both of these and National Treasure are things that are going beyond the headlines and things like this. And one of the characters here that we haven't mentioned is like the police PR guy, the Welsh guy who sort of oversees the investigation. Is like, oh, we want this picture here, we want this here, you know, the media intrusion, the PR-ness of this murder investigation, which is something I don't think we really see in TV dramas, which is interesting. But these sort of marauding press as this sort of just like...
The standing outside...
Like, almost like the monster of this... asking inappropriate questions and, you know, trying to get Simon as he's leaving, and you know, Simon being badgered, and every time someone leaves the house, and they're just there. And I know there is a certain authenticity to this, but it just feels everything else in Kiri works so well that this tiny element of the press is a little bit, for me, the thing that doesn't always work.
The other thing, and I don't know if you referenced it, the very uncomfortable scene where the son comes in on the mother having a shower.
I didn't mention. Yeah, and after she's had a liaison with her other man. But
the kind of very uncomfortable, you know, part about it, and the bit where he kind of, you know, whips the towel away, and he talks about a really inappropriate exchange he'd been having at school and on Facebook with a young girl at the school, and I feel like almost now he's a red herring character. Like, we're supposed to believe by his actions that it's possible that he might have killed his sister, but it's a huge leap from the incidents he's talking about to killing his sister. But he kind of still he's got a lot of gaps in where he's supposed to be. They haven't found any CCTV footage of where he said he was. So there's still all of that, and you know, but I did find that whole scene a little bit too much. And I know that happened in National Treasure as well. There were scenes with Robbie Coltrane's daughter which were a bit real close to the bone, and you know, I know when you're trying to push this kind of envelope, sometimes you might go the other side, and I kind of feel like that scene was just the wrong side of stuff. I don't know, what did you feel?
It needed to be uncomfortable. You've got that feeling about him that there's something not quite right, but again, I'm with you. I think it is a little bit of a red herring. Have you got a suspicion? Have you got, next week what the reveal's going to be?
I'm going to say no, because each episode has really opened up more about each one, so I feel like it could even be the dad. But because he's just so vanilla and nothing about him. Really, when he said he was going to step forward and take the rap for his son, was the first interesting thing about him. And now I'm kind of thinking, well, why would he say that?
Because we know basically she got home. We assume that she got back into the house.
He says, near home. I don't think they ever said she got home. They said she got off a bus.
Or she was coming home.
Yeah.
I almost feel like there was an accident. One member of that family caused an accident. So either Jim, Alice, or Simon, and probably the parents thinking, oh, no, we're going to get charged. Something's going to happen, and so they sort of almost staged the. But then I don't know, was the body moved or?
Yeah, I mean, I hope what we don't get is It was a local paedophile, and I don't want...
No, I don't think they do that.
I don't want... It's been such a good whodunit as well as a story that actually I need a kind of a reasonable explanation. I need something that's going to be understandable. I kind of feel like there's an awful lot to wrap up in the next episode.
Yeah, no, I agree. You've had one episode based on each, each major character or family. Now you've got to wrap up 3 big stories in one episode, and you've got to have a third of the time dedicated to each of them.
And again, because we've got the little preview, you get the fact that we're going to get Sarah Lancashire's mother's going to come back into the episode.
Sue Johnston.
Sue Johnston. There's obviously going to be the more stuff with Nathaniel and this new lawyer that they introduce. So yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know how it's going to go.